Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really challenging argument from a text called The Delusion of Rights Without Transcendence. The basic idea is that many of us might be caught in a huge logical trap when we talk about justice and morality, and we might not even realize it.
So, what if the way we all think about our rights is built on a massive fundamental contradiction? The source we're digging into today argues just that. It says a lot of us are trying to have our cake and eat it too, and that this could actually be weakening the very ideas we're trying to protect. Okay, so let's unpack this.
All right, first things first, we got to get this key term down. When the author talks about a delusion, they're not talking about a medical condition, not at all. It's a philosophical idea. Think of it like this. It describes a belief system that denies the very ground it's standing on. It's like you're confidently sawing off the tree branch you happen to be sitting on. You're literally destroying the one thing that's holding you up.
Okay, so to build this case, the argument goes straight to what you could call the source code of the American system. It digs into the foundational documents and asks a really simple but incredibly powerful question. Where did they say our rights actually come from?
And the answer, according to the Declaration of Independence, is pretty clear. The text points out that it makes a very specific claim. It says that rights are not a human invention. They come from somewhere else. A transcendent source, something above and beyond any government, grounded in what it calls the laws of nature and of nature's God.
And this right here is such a critical distinction. This is the whole logic behind a right being inalienable. Think about it. If a government grants you a right, well, that same government can take it away, right? But if a government only recognizes a right, that means the right already exists on its own, on a higher level. The government's job isn't to create it. It's just to protect it. So this all leads to what the author calls an inescapable choice, a real fork in the road. When you boil it all down and ask, where do rights come from? The argument is that there are really only two possible answers. And every single system of law or morality has to, eventually, pick one.
And just look at how different those two paths are. On one side, if rights just come from us, from humans, then they aren't really rights at all. They're more like permissions. Justice is just whatever the people in power decide it is. And under that logic, something like slavery wasn't wrong. It was just legal at the time. But on the other side, if rights are grounded in something beyond us, they become an anchor. A law allowing slavery wouldn't just be a bad law. It would be fundamentally unjust because it violates that higher, real standard.
So what happens when we try to, avoid making this choice, when we try to have it both ways? Well, the author claims that a very specific and deeply inconsistent pattern starts to show up in the way we talk and act.
Okay, so here's the first part of the pattern. You get this explicit rejection of any kind of transcendent moral order. It's a pretty common idea today, right? The belief that we humans just make up our own values, that there's no objective good or evil built into the fabric of the universe. But then, and this is the key, often in the very next breath, that same person will talk about something like inherent human dignity, or they'll condemn something as being objectively evil. And that, right there, is the contradiction the author is pointing to. It's like saying, hey, there's no such thing as up, and then immediately pointing to the ceiling. You're denying that an objective moral reality exists, but you're borrowing its language and its power whenever it's convenient.
Okay, so how do people try to get around this apparent contradiction? Well, the text looks at one of the most common arguments, which is that, yeah, rights aren't real, but they're useful fictions. They're just helpful tools we've all agreed to pretend are real because it helps us build a better, safer society.
But the author argues this defense just completely falls apart when you really look at it. I mean, think about it for a second. Does anyone really believe that torturing a child is wrong in the same way that, say, driving on the wrong side of the street is wrong? No way. We have this deep, gut-level feeling that some things are just evil, not just inconvenient or suboptimal. And that immediate revulsion we feel, the author says that proves we don't actually believe rights are just made-up stories.
All right, so what about another way out? Can't we just throw up our hands and say, look, I don't know where rights come from, so I'm just going to be agnostic about the whole thing?
While the text argues that doesn't work either. It calls this a performative contradiction, meaning your actions contradict what you're saying. The very act of standing up and condemning something as unjust is not an act of uncertainty. It's an act of incredible moral confidence. The author says it's like confidently marching across a bridge while telling everyone you have absolutely no idea if it has any foundations. Your actions are screaming the exact opposite of your words.
And this is where it all comes together. The argument moves from this abstract philosophical idea to how it plays out in the real world, specifically in American civic life. This is where we see what the author calls the constitutional trap.
So here's the trap laid out step by step. You invoke a right, like your right to free speech, but the system you're invoking explicitly says that right is inalienable because it comes from a transcendent source. Then, at the same time, you deny that any such source even exists. The author's conclusion? You're caught in an inescapable bind. It's like picking up a shield to protect yourself while loudly insisting the metal it's made from doesn't exist. According to this argument, that's a philosophical delusion. So what's the big deal? Why does this matter? Well, the author claims this isn't just some abstract puzzle for philosophers to debate, it has real, serious consequences. When a society's shared understanding of justice gets cut loose from any solid foundation, the whole structure, the whole republic, starts to get wobbly. It becomes unstable.
And so that leaves us with the central challenge that this text throws down, a question that really forces you to choose. Can you condemn injustice as something that is objectively wrong, while at the same time insisting that there's no such thing as an objective moral reality? According to this author, trying to have it both ways isn't just a contradiction, it's the delusion sitting right at the heart of our modern idea of right.